On January 21st, 2017, to capture the largest parade in Seattle history, which of course was the Women's March. So that, in this book, excerpted from about 1,800 of Paul's columns, and 37 years of work, we have we've taken about 100 subjects, and my job has been to go back and find something equivalent or at least that has a reference in some way thematically to the original. Here's Paul's original photograph, that was the very first one he took for the column. So, and you can keep walking around and move your way around, and Paul will sign and he may comment as I speak. But this is for Kurt. Kurt and Cedar. So this very first photo was taken probably in the fall before he had completely committed, and was a lovely picture with the barista in 81 probably. And here it is in the book. So you're looking at the very first layout in the book. We followed the columns that we chose ranged from columns from the very first to the most recent one this last summer. So we've managed to put those in the book consecutively based on a column date. This is a shot of Seattle's deepest snow, and it's 1880, looking up First and Cherry. And this snow picture was taken by a photographer who went out from his studio and shot up Cherry, and there's, for 8 days, 64 inches of snowfall. So that was our deepest snow. The second deepest snow was in 1960, and that also has a little excerpt in the book. But let's look at, so I actually couldn't get back to this, to the snow, but I got to this spot, and I went out a year and a half ago with, there's a little bit of snow there. And you can see that the fire hydrant, this is the closest I could get in the last couple of years. So there's a fire hydrant. It was a blizzard. It was a blizzard. This is a lovely waterfront shot by the great Norwegian photographer Anders Vilsa, who was here for a little less than a decade until his wife called him back to Norway, and where he became the great Norwegian national treasure for the next 30 years. But this was taken in probably 1898 of the waterfront, and I went back and repeated it with my students, leaping and hopping at the... Now, one thing that's going to change, and this is part of what we're trying to document here, and some of these things are soon to disappear. Of course, the viaduct is one of them. So it may be that in a year's time, I have to return and retake this shot for our next edition. Here's another Anders Vilsa shot of the 1898, 1899, and it's gold rush time. And we're down on the waterfront a little bit south of the fountain shot. And this waterfront shot is, if you look up on the sign, and I can't quite read it from here, but it says aluminum houses, 150 pounds. And over the winter of '99, there were about more than 100 ships set sail for the Yukon because it was the gold rush. So today, there we are at Boulder, and it's already changed. Some of you may recognize that there's no longer parking down there. It's turned into a street below the Maynards Street openings. And here's Anders Vilsa is so beloved in Norway that they've released a whole series of stamps with his pictures in them. I chose this one because it seems emblematic of this lonely guy returning home, and here he is. What he became the sort of Edward Curtis of Norway. This is a photo looking down from the just topped Smith Tower. It hadn't been completed so that visitors could go up. This was Frank Noel, the Webster and Stevens photographer in 1913, and climbed to the very near the top before they put safety rails on the observation deck. And he could look down now for the first time from second and Esler. He can look down and see from that spot Queen Anne, and you can see Lake Union, and you can see Capitol Hill and Wallingford in the far distance. It was another year before the average citizens could climb up and see this. So he took this photo for public distribution, and they sold it happily to him. But I want to point something out here. Whoops. I want you to watch now. Oh, now we're going too far. I'm going to just point out the Rainier Club and the Methodist Church. See right behind it. So keep your eyes on the Rainier Club, and we'll go to the next, to today's appearance. Not much of Lake Union. This is the Monongahela escaping from under the Aurora Bridge just before the cantilevers closed. And the Monongahela was a four-master that had been in Lake Union for about 3 or 4 years, and then was pulled out with its masts high, but it ended up being sold within a year or so to a Vancouver logging company where it languished for a while and was retired. But let's look now.
Let's have a hand for Gene that has to persevere between all this confusion in signing books. Nice work, Gene.
So this show is only going to be a couple minutes longer because we're going to go back to signing books, but let's go forward. This is a story. Frank Carhart was the fellow who actually discovered gold for the first time in the Yukon. And he made a gold telegraph key entirely from gold that he had discovered. And this telegraph key was also surrounded with 22 nuggets that he had dug out of his mountain. And inlaid them all on a little piece of Alaskan marble. The reason why this particular key is significant is that it was used to inaugurate all sorts of events around the country, but particularly in Seattle. This key was used by Taft, President Taft, in 1909 to open the first Seattle World's Fair, the Alaska Yukon Pacific. And if we look forward now, this is the opening of the Aurora Bridge, also originally known as the George Washington Memorial Bridge. On February 22nd, 1932, the 200th anniversary of Washington's birthday. And the story of this opening is that Governor Roland Hartley, who was a tremendous opponent of interstate highway projects and state highway projects, and was fiercely opposed to the Aurora Bridge and completion of 99. When he saw the popularity of the bridge, and all this crowds of thousands were waiting on either side before the opening, when he saw that popularity of the bridge, he got up at the podium and he took full credit for it. And he spoke at great length, and at 2:57 in the afternoon, Herbert Hoover was standing with his finger on the Taft key, the Taft telegraph key, ready to press it to open the bridge. And so while Governor Hartley was bloviating, he kept on going, and he was interrupted by Herbert Hoover, 3,000 miles away, pressing the Taft key, and the fireboats sent their streams into the air, and the fireworks went off, and the crowd streamed cheering out onto the bridge, and the flags unfurled, and Hartley never finished his speech. And so here, we're looking at it today. Now, and here is Herbert Hoover doing exactly that, and I always wonder, what room is he standing in? It's 2:57 in the afternoon. We can date this. It's February 22nd, 2:57 in the afternoon, 1932. It seems he's in a washroom or the kitchen or something, but there he is with the tap key. And of course, there was one final use of the tap key by John F. Kennedy, and it opened the Seattle World's Fair. And in the book we have, I'm just going to show you the spread, a little girl named Paula Dahl, who was the 9 millionth visitor to the fair. And if you see in the then photo on the left, you can look on the far left and see her proud parents looking down at her. And you can see the enormous stuffed dog that she won. And over her shoulder, you can see her glowering sister. And she still keeps the 9 millionth sign in her classroom. She's an elementary school teacher in Issaquah, and she has it on the wall. So she graced us with having her kids come out and pose around the 9 millionth sign to repeat that photo. Okay, we're going to pause right here and sign some more books, and we'll do a second installment as we get into our second hour. Thank you, guys. A lot of flames. There's a marvelous character up on the Fry Opera House here. You have no idea who he is, but he perched up high to get the best look of the water coming up from the waterfront. Paul thinks that the reason there were so few photos is because the photographers were all gathering their equipment and racing away from the flames. Here it is today. And this is an example of what Paul calls my big 21-foot pole. Because there are places that I have to shoot from that I can only approximate. I have to get up high and there's no structure nearby. So I'll hoist the pole up in the air to take advantage of the height. Yeah, it would be great to be able to have a drone, but they aren't allowed on city streets for some reason. This is a couple days after the fire, and it's an important location in downtown Seattle, because on that same, you can see the front doorway and the windows of the structure which eventually became, we'll look at it today, the sinking ship garage. So let's go back and take a look at that. This was the front of the Occidental Hotel. And when it burned down, it wasn't long before they were replacing all of these buildings very quickly. The Pioneer Building, which is on pretty much the corner of it, is near where Gessler's first house was. And the Occidental Hotel, which was replaced by the Seattle Hotel, which looked like that in 1908. And this was a story of, and we're experiencing some of this today. We're losing a lot of old places, and they're being replaced rapidly in Seattle. Well, this was a story that has a mixed ending. But here is the Seattle Hotel in that same location as the Occidental Hotel stood on that same triangular lot. And it was replaced in the early 60s by the sinking ship garage. The sinking ship garage, however, was the destruction that launched a movement of Seattle preservation led by Victor Snyder. And people were so infuriated by the loss of this marvelous hotel that they gathered together and became a powerful force of preservation. And by the late 60s, when the Pike Place Market came under threat, they managed to save it. And it was that's why at the north end of the market there's the Victor Steinberg Park, because of course, but it was that moment of that time of loss in which we end up with this ugly little structure. We saved the market. Now, Paul, I'm going to turn.
I'm right here.
I'm going to put you on the mic. Paul's going to describe to you the sensitivity of the architects.
It will all turn on. Okay. Well, there was quite a cacophony of regrets from local preservationists and anybody with any common artistic sense about the destruction of that hotel. And they joined together, and it was impressive enough that the people who built the ship, the sinking ship, felt a little embarrassed about it. So they said, wait a second, we're not the scoundrels you think we are. We're going to include in the garage some of the architectural motifs of the historical Romanesque district. For instance, look at the top of our sinking ship. Now, look at the top of our garage, you'll see that the architectural window form, the fenestration form, is the, what do they call that? They call it
basket handle.
Basket handle, right. And that fits very nicely for the merchants building across the street. Can you see that? Is that up? Oh yeah, you can see them both there, right. So you see, let's have a little sympathy for the architects.
It's such a, a revealing sense of,
Yeah.
I mean, they must have had a moral struggle.
Yeah.
So here we are, and this is the market in 1907, and of course, this is what was saved in the late 60s by a very strong and inspired movement, and the loss of the Salmon Hotel was what inspired that, began that inspiration. So now, let's look at it today. And of course, what a vibrant, lovely place it is. A touchstone. This is where I always find myself returning to figure out what my relationship with our city is when so much around us is changing. Well, here we are at Thurman Union. This is the post office. This is the post office, and these post office steps and these columns were made of Chuckanut sandstone, built in 1908. A classic structure. It only lasted for about 50 years. And if you lived in the time that it was around, you'd say, "Meet me at the steps," and everyone would know you meant the post office steps. In about 58, the powers that be decided that the sandstone was just too porous, and the pigeons had pooped on it for 50 years, and they didn't like the stains. So they thought, well, we'll just take the thing down and replace it with something that's a little bit less porous and easier to manage and clean. So they replaced it, of course, with this modern structure in 1958, and it was called by the PI architectural critic several years ago. He said the ugliest building in Seattle. It's as if a file cabinet was laying on its side.
Has anybody other got another candidate for the ugliest building in
Seattle Admin Building.
What is it? What is it?
Seattle Admin Building downtown.
King County.
Yeah, King County, sorry, King County.
The administration is only one like that, yeah.
Yeah.
That really is a shame. Yeah.
Well, here we are in Fremont, and this is one of the last streetcars passing on the tracks in Fremont. And it turns out that the trolleyman who was a photographer took a number of photos of these streetcars. This one actually lived another year. Most of the other streetcars had already been taken away from downtown and replaced by trackless trolleys and by gasoline engines. I had to go back and find a modern equivalent of this. Let's look. So you can see this is in Fremont. There's the Fremont Baptist Church hovering up above. Well, again, one of the jobs that I've taken on is to go back and find something of equal importance and beauty. And for lovers of streetcars, it's hard to replace it. So I went back last year and same corner and found two women walking abreast. typically, we've done this show about how many times, Clay? 12 times?
14.
14 times. And whenever we show the picture of the Kalakala going through the locks in 1948, the audience always says, ooh.
Not this group.
They're Kalakala skeptics.
If you wrote it, you were skeptical of it.
That's right. Now Clay is going to do his impression. Come here, Clay. Clay wrote the Kalakala, and he has the best impression we've found so far. We've asked for a number of them. He has the best impression of the actual sound of the ship. So put the mic up.
Yeah. You know, in 1967, I was a high schooler. We went across there to the Olympic College Stageman Festival just a month before it went off the run. And I remember so well that it sounded like, whoa. The walls literally vibrated while the ferry was going on.
Clay is the editor of the book, and he's put months and months and months of work into
He
this.
was the editor of the West Seattle
West
Herald
Seattle
for a number
Herald,
of
he
years.
was from years and a journalist. And
And wrote the book called The West Side Story with a lot of help from other West Seattle. They're a tremendously prejudiced group.
A lot of help from Paul.
a lot of help from Paul. So I had to go back and find a vessel going through the locks, and went back last year and happened upon, actually I knew it was coming through, so we showed up about 6:30 in the morning and got this, which is the USS Turner Joy. And only after I took the photo, and after we brought out the book actually, did I discover that the Turner Joy, which is a museum ship in Bremerton, is notable in U.S. history because, of course, it was, along with the USS Maddox, it was in the Gulf of Tonkin in '64, in August of '64. And it was a false attack which allowed Johnson to push through our involvement in the war. So here it is off the coast of Vietnam. And here is what a little bit of the remains of the Kalakala off of in West Seattle, just
Gene,
down
go
from
back
Salties.
3 slides so they can see the original wheelhouse. Right
There's the wheelhouse right up here. And so all that remains, many of you may know this history, but the Kalakala ended up being sent up to Alaska to be a fish processor. There was an effort to save it, but not quite enough interest to do so. It would cost a lot. But here's the remains of the wheelhouse. And so Clay shot this, and he shot looking through it back at the skyline. So you can still visit the Kalakala, but it has been silenced, thankfully.
Is that food for the next group? Or is it
That's you. It's all for you.
Thank you.
Here's a slide that we're coming towards the end of our little program here, but here's a slide that Paul was given to by
Yeah, you're right, Ivar Hagman, yeah, that's right. He had it in his desk, and I think that's actually the first time I ever met with him at his desk. He pulled this out and showed it to me. And now it's part of the Ivar's archive, which I helped put together over the years. Ivar lived about another 3 or 4 years after I met him.
This is a picture of Ivar's family. This is his mom and his grandmother and his grandfather. And we don't know who this is, but one of the Hanson family, one of Ivar's cousins, said she'd find out. But I think he looks like.
I actually do know, I just didn't bring the name written on a tape.
Well, she's going to tell us.
Well, then we'll already know it twice then.
Well, you keep promising, and I keep waiting.
Well, I know my promises are worth overboiled clam juice.
Well, this is also, it bears the distinction of being the oldest structure still standing in Seattle today. The oldest one. This was built in the 1860s, and it was the house of Doc Maynards when he moved out from downtown, what is now downtown, out to West Seattle to leave behind the Borens and the Denny's and the Yesler. and he ended up in West Seattle trying to start a farm with his wife Catherine Maynard, but unfortunately they were terrible farmers and nearly starved to death.
It was a tough year.
It was rough for him. But so today we go back and here it is. Now one thing that the cousin of Ivar said was that this extension was added to the original house by the Hansons. So that's what she told us yesterday. And so what that means is that the original shape, that extension has been removed today. So the original shape of the house is much closer to what we see today, which
I kind of wonder if she knows what she's talking about.
she could have been lying just to please
No,
us.
I don't think lying, it's just that you can see how that can be switcherooed. So
Maybe
you have
so.
to be skeptical about it.
You'll have
but
to
then
have
on
a
it-
conversation with her and argue with her about it, because she said it was the family.
I will try it, yeah. I have her number, so.
So here we are, a couple slides from that. This is Princess Angeline, who was named Princess Angeline by Catherine Maynard, and her actual given name was Kiki Soblu. And about a year ago, Paul and our collaborator Ron Edge worked together to discover exactly where this shack was, which is below Western. They knew that. But Ron and Paul triangulated. They looked at stumps, they looked at the structures of eaves and buildings, and they found that her porch today is right here. Ron is sitting on it. And it's one of the only little greenbelt strips running down from Western down towards the waterfront. That's the Pike Place Market Garage right here. This is the Fix Medor building on the right.
Clay, where's another point of view that you can see this from, Clay?
If you go to Pike Place Market and decide to get hungry and get something to eat at Lowell's, go up to the second floor and look straight down and you can see the screen area right out the window, straight down.
And it too is an unmarked, I should have mentioned this about the oldest house, is there's no plaque in front of the house that tells you that this is the oldest house. The address is in the book, so you can go visit and knock on the door. And they're actually, over the last few months, we've seen they've improved the front of it, and so they've got some house-proud people in there that have done a great job fixing
You
it
may want to come to the restaurant with your own plaque.
up. So this too has no plaque. It's only been a year since the column came out about it. But it would seem like that might be an appropriate place to be able to look down and know that you're looking at. And here's Princess Angeline and Chief Seattle inset. Princess Angeline Kiki Soblu is sitting on, right behind her is First Avenue, and she's sitting on what is now Post Alley. And it's early 1890s. And she'd take in laundry and worked as a basket seller and people would come and take her photo. She was very well known for having her photo taken. She'd do that for a little bit of cash. And this is by an unknown photographer, but it's one of my favorite photos of her. And we posed them together at this spot because we went to Clay actually. Is a good friend of a direct descendant of Chief Seattle, Ken Workman. And Ken is descended through Chief Seattle's second wife. And we'll see them now. That's Ken on the right, and his distant cousin, Mary Lou Slaughter, who's a direct descendant of Kiki Soblu. And they came out, and Mary Lou is 80 years old. And they came out together to retake the photo in the market.
They were both great grandchildren
Right.
of the people in the prior photo.
We practiced saying four. There are four greats.
All right, let's say that together. Okay. You ready? Great grandchildren. I think we got it now.
So while we're taking this photo, and we've spent about 10 minutes taking the picture, and actually Clay took a shot of me taking the picture. And as we're taking this photo, Ken whipped around a couple times, and I didn't know what he was responding to. There's no one near him, And Clay is witness to this as well. And later, down at the waterfront Ivar's, we were having a little happy hour. And I said, Ken, what were you jerking around like that for? And he said, well, I don't know, Gene, but while we were taking the picture, I thought someone was trying to pick my pocket. I said, really? He said, yeah. And he reached over and he said, I got tapped on the arm, just like that. So he was tapped on the elbow. And I think of this as a nudge of history. And again, when I'm taking these photos and I find myself standing in the same spot that a great photographer like Ashel Curtis or one of our great postcard photographers stood, I always feel a little ka-chunk as it locks into place. So I guess I
So let
sympathize
me,
with
Clay, do
Ken.
you remember that moment when he was jerking and feeling for his elbow?
I remember him telling us about it later.
You
I
don't
also
remember the
remember
moment,
that there
though.
was nobody jerking his elbow.
Yeah, you're an honest man. You could have embellished it and said, yeah, I remember him, he was jerking a little bit there.
All right, well, that's it. Thank you for
Can you turn the mic back on?
Are there any questions you'd like to ask regarding our private lives or?
Everybody who's here, you're all very much interested in this book and really loyal to Ivers. You came here because of the mailing list, and I'm grateful that you're here. You should know that you just got a taste tonight, and you can go to pauldorpat.com and see every column that this book is based on. You can see the blurbs of 25 people. You can see the media that we've gotten over the last month or so on TV and radio and print. And you can also...
A candy maker.
And if you, yeah, Fran Bigelow. And if you walk away and think, oh gosh, I should have gotten another book, because this is the season, you know. You can order it very easily online, and you can get Paul and Jean to inscribe it just as you had them inscribe your book tonight. So
And
just
that increases the value by 25 cents.
25 cents.
If you have either one of us do it singly, it's just a dime. But together we have power.
Just remember, it's very easy, pauldorpat.com. pauldorpat.com. Thank you very much.